Welcome back to Harbour Unboxed. Today we are taking a look at GPU performance in The Last of Us Part 1. And if you're unaware, this game has stirred up quite a bit of online controversy due to its poor performance on PC, with many gamers now having taken the time to express their disappointment in the form of a negative Steam review. And this is unusual because us gamers are normally a really positive bunch. And here's an ad spot. Today's sponsor spot is brought to you by Casetify, a leading brand in protective phone cases. These high-quality phone cases offer your personal mobile device robust protection while remaining stylish and functional. Casetify has conducted extensive drop testing, resulting in safe 3.5-meter drops with their new EcoShock technology, while also boasting military-grade protection backed by a 6-month warranty. Each case is made from 65% recycled and plant-based materials and allows for thousands of potential customization options to make each case unique to you. The Casetify website features easy-to-use built-in tools allowing you to customize text orientation, size, font, and color. You can also upload images via your social media accounts or directly from your device, and with a broad catalog of supported devices, Casetify should have a case for you. So with their simple to navigate website and a variety of additional accessories available, you'll be sure to get the protection you need. So for more information, please check the link in the video description. Okay, so the primary complaints from gamers have been the horrible stuttering and constant crashing. And now that I've run 26 different graphics cards through the game, I think the reason for this is quite obvious. It does appear to be a VRAM issue. Most gamers like to dial up the quality settings, and when doing so in The Last of Us Part 1, you'll quickly run out of VRAM on a graphics card with just 8GB, even at 1080p. So those running an RTX 3070, for example, are probably accustomed to just maxing out quality settings at 1080p and still receiving a smooth, high refresh rate-like experience, but that will not be the case here. The Last of Us Part 1 will happily consume over 12GB of VRAM at 1080p, using the ultra quality preset, and this isn't just allocation, rather the game appears to actually use that much memory. And this is a big problem for those of you with an 8GB graphics card trying to play using the ultra quality settings. And I can understand the confusion around this issue, as the game developer's own recommended PC specs don't specifically say you can't use an 8GB graphics card at 1080p using the ultra quality preset. Rather, the specs provide ultra preset recommendations for the 4K resolution. They do recommend 8GB graphics cards for 1080p high. Anyway, it's not super clear, so that's why we're here to provide you with a detailed GPU benchmark, though it's only about half as detailed as I'd actually like with 26 graphics cards rather than 50 plus, and that's because I've wasted 10 hours, probably more than 10 hours, watching the game build shaders, so that ate quite heavily into my benchmark time. Now for testing, I'm using the woods section of the game, as this appeared to be one of the more graphically demanding sections with a lot of foliage, as you'd typically expect to find, I guess, in the woods. VRAM usage was high here. I wouldn't say it was notably higher than other sections of the game though, which makes my results a little bit strange when compared to some of the other professional reviews that I've seen. So I guess I'll get that out of the way first. I've seen a few other reviewers benchmarking the game showing pretty reasonable minimum or 1% low performance for 8GB graphics cards when using the ultra quality preset at 1080p and some even at 1440p. Yet my 1% lows are just a total blowout with 8GB cards, and this does appear to be in line with user reports and uploaded footage on the YouTube platform from gamers, showing horrible 1% lows with products such as the RTX 3070. So I guess let's take a look at that. Here's a side-by-side comparison of the RTX 3070, which has 8GB of VRAM, and the RX 6800, which has 16GB of VRAM. The footage here doesn't necessarily line up exactly, it's just the same section of the game, but what it does do is clearly show you how bad the 1% lows are on the RTX 3070. In this single example, we're looking at 1% lows of around 20 FPS on the RTX 3070, while the RX 6800 is up around 80 FPS. You can also visually see the stutters on the Geforce GPU, and here's a quick look at a frame time graph. As you can see, the 6800 is smooth, while the RTX 3070 is a mess. So given all that information, if you do come across a benchmark showing much better 1% lows or minimum frame rate performance than what we're going to show with 8GB graphics cards, it's either because the scene they're using for testing is less demanding or just a change in hardware. Perhaps the issue is less severe when using an Intel processor or the Intel platform. I'm not suggesting that it is, but I'm not willing to rule anything out without further testing. And for my testing, I'm using the Ryzen 9 7950X 3D, but with the second CCD disabled, and this has been done to ensure maximum gaming performance. So essentially, we're testing with the yet-to-be-released 7800X3D. The CPU has been tested on the Gigabyte X670E Aorus Master using 32GB of DDR5 6000 cell 30 memory. As for the drivers, I used Adrenalin 23.3.2 and Game Ready driver 531.41. So let's get into it. Okay, so first up, here's a quick look at VRAM usage at the various resolutions and presets we use for testing. From 4K high to any resolution using the ultra quality preset, we're running well over 12GB of VRAM, and the suggested VRAM requirements in the game menu were bang on with what we saw in our benchmark pass. Then for the high quality preset at 1440p, we dropped down to around 10GB of VRAM usage in our benchmark pass, while the game suggested it would use up to 11.3GB. And then once we drop down to 1080p with the high quality preset, the VRAM usage dips below 10GB. And finally, with the medium quality settings, we're looking at VRAM usage between 9.5 and 11GB, depending on the resolution. And based on what you're about to see, it would seem as though up to around 11GB of VRAM usage is generally okay with an 8GB graphics card, but going beyond 12GB completely kills performance. And here's a look at the 1080p Ultra data, and we have a few interesting things to note here. Firstly, there appears to be some kind of system bottleneck limiting 1% low performance on the RTX 4090, probably a CPU limitation, or it could be an issue with the game that needs to be addressed. In any case, the RTX 4090 pumped out 161 FPS at 1080p, though with 107 FPS for the 1% lows, it was comparable to the RTX 4080 and Radeon RX 7900 XTX in that regard. The RTX 4070 Ti and 7900 XT delivered comparable results as the Geforce GPU was just 4% faster, and those two were split by the RTX 3090 Ti. The RTX 3090 and 6950 XT were neck and neck, as were the 6800 XT and RTX 3080. Where things get messy for Nvidia are the previous generation mid-range comparisons. The RX 6800, for example, averaged 77 FPS, whereas the RTX 3070 managed just 56 FPS, making the Radeon GPU 38% faster. But worse than that is the horrible and frankly unplayable 1% lows of the 8GB RTX 3070. And this means gamers will receive a better gaming experience with the Intel Arc A770, RTX 3060, or in particular, the 6700 XT and 6750 XT, as all of these models feature 12GB or more VRAM. Meanwhile, any Radeon or Arc GPU with 8GB of VRAM or less really struggled here and basically resulted in constant stutters. This graph clearly demonstrates why so many users are complaining about stuttering issues in The Last of Us Part 1. 28% of all Steam users run a graphics card with 8GB of VRAM, with the second largest bracket being 6GB. Just 10% of all Steam users have 12GB graphics cards, 3% have 10GB, and less than 1% have 16GB, with 1.5% having 24GB. So this is quite clearly the issue for those trying to use the ultra quality settings. Moving to 1440p allows the RTX 4090 to pull away from the RTX 4080, even when looking at the 1% lows. The 4080 was again slightly faster than the 7900 XTX, though they were neck and neck, as was the 4070 Ti and 7900 XT. The RTX 3080 10GB still performed quite well, though 1% lows did slip a little bit when compared to the 6800 XT, and this is without question a VRAM issue. Then at 4K, you'll ideally want an RTX 4090, and the flagship Geforce GPU really shined here with an impressive 81 FPS. And then we see the RTX 4080 was the only other GPU to reach 60 FPS, as the 7900 XTX fell short with 58 FPS. The RTX 3090 Ti managed 53 FPS, and then we dropped down to 47 FPS with the 7900 XT, which is certainly still playable, but probably not a desirable frame rate for a now $800 US graphics card. Now, reducing the quality preset to high, we find all tested graphics cards worked quite well at 1080p. Well, at least from the RTX 3050 and up. For some reason, the A750 is pretty broken here. It was tested with the same driver as the A770, so maybe this is some kind of VRAM issue. Perhaps memory management isn't as well optimized on Arc as it is Geforce and Radeon GPUs, or it could just be some kind of bug. The good news is you can play the game using either an RTX 3050 or RX 6600, and for more consistent performance, the RX 6600 XT and 6650 XT, or the RTX 3060, they'll work really well. Then if you want to keep 1% lows above 60 FPS, the RTX 3060 Ti or 6700 XT will do the trick. Moving to 1440p will require quite a bit more GPU power. Realistically, you want an RTX 3060 Ti or 6700 XT for around 60 FPS on average. Then if you want to keep the 1% lows above 60 FPS, you'll need either a 6800 XT or RTX 3080 10GB. Then finally, at 4K, we are once again running into VRAM issues with the 8GB graphics cards, but the 10GB RTX 3080 still seems pretty good with 1% lows of 34 FPS and an average frame rate of 47 FPS. Not exactly mind-blowing performance, but it was certainly playable. Ideally, you'll want an RTX 3090 Ti, 4080, 4090 or 7900 XTX. What I found surprising here was how poorly the RTX 4070 Ti performed, only just managing to edge out the 6950 XT, though this did mean that the 7900 XT was just 8% faster. Finally, here's a look at performance using the medium quality preset, and basically everything's playable here, except for the Radeon RX 6500 XT, which could only manage 29 FPS at 1080p. And by the way, using the lowest possible quality settings at 1080p, only saw the 6500 XT render just over 40 FPS. What a garbage product. For an average of 60 FPS, you'll only require an RX 6600 here, and to keep 1% lows over 60 FPS, the 6600 XT or RTX 3060 will suffice. The game still looks very impressive using the medium quality preset, so if you are suffering from stuttering issues, I'd certainly recommend trying the medium quality preset. Even at 1440p, it's quite easy to achieve 60 FPS. For this, you'll just require an RTX 3060 Ti or 6700 XT. Either of those work well, and frame time performance was excellent. Even with 8GB of VRAM, we saw the game play very well at 1440p using the medium quality preset. Oddly though, the A750 again tanked, so I'm not quite sure what the issue is there with Intel's Arc GPU, but the A770 did work well enough. And of course, here's a look at the 4K data. The RTX 4090 pumped out over 100 FPS on average, making it 31% faster than the 7900 XTX. Meanwhile, the flagship Radeon GPU was a few frames faster than the RTX 4080, which was just 8% faster than the RTX 3090 Ti. The 7900 XT and RTX 3090 were still good for 65 FPS on average, while the RTX 3080 Ti also snuck past the 60 FPS barrier. So there you have it. Using slightly dialed down quality settings, The Last of Us Part 1 appears to be pretty easy to run. And really, providing that you can manage the VRAM requirements, you shouldn't have any issues. It is quite remarkable how well a previous generation GPU such as the Radeon RX 6800 plays the game. It is buttery smooth, and that's probably not something you'd expect to find based on the online controversy. Of course, you could certainly argue that the game shouldn't require more than 8GB of VRAM, and point to other games that look as good or better with less extreme requirements. You're certainly welcome to that opinion. That said, I don't really agree with that opinion. The game looks stunning, the texture quality is excellent, the geometry is impressive, and we are talking about VRAM requirements for the highest quality preset. The game still scales very well using the lower quality settings, and I'd say it's silly to limit VRAM usage for high-end GPUs. If you can improve visuals through higher quality textures and high levels of detail, then by all means do so. And it's not like the game doesn't work with 8GB graphics cards, it does, and it does very well, but not with the ultra quality preset. And this isn't the first time we've seen this, and it's going to become commonplace. 8GB of VRAM is very much entry level at this point, and while I do feel for those who spent big on an RTX 3070 Ti, for example, the writing very much was on the wall by that point, and I've been warning of this for years now. Anyway, if you are experiencing stuttering issues, check the suggested VRAM requirements in the menu and make sure you're not exceeding them, as doing so can also lead to crashing. And providing you are within the VRAM budget for your particular graphics card, and you have a half-decent CPU and at least 16GB of RAM, though there is evidence that you'd probably start looking at 32GB, the game should play very well. And with that, I'm going to end this video. So if you enjoyed this one, please do give it a like. It was a heap of work and lots of sitting around watching shaders building. That was particularly fun. Spent probably more time in the menu than actually doing benchmark passes with this one, which is, I think that's a first. So, yep, first there. Patreon float plane. Check those out because you can support the channel more directly and get some really cool perks in return. We have an exclusive Discord server for members only, monthly live streams, extra content there, behind the scenes stuff. Tim just did some interesting stuff with Apple products. So bit of a surprise there, and Q&As. Check that out if you're interested, but if not, that's perfectly fine. And I would like to thank you for watching this video. I'm your host, Steve. See you next time.